I'm reading from the book All the Women of the Bible, and it's a story time. It'll be in multiple parts. It's meant for you to listen and hear. So today's story is Eve and the First Fruits. So it'll likely be a 3-part story, so let's get into it. She should have known, Eve reflected years later as she tended her grandson Enosh's son. She should have realized it when she and Adam had not died the death as Lord God had warned them they would. They had not garnered that promised first fruit of their deceived, foolish obedience. Thinking to be as gods, they had lost everything, but they had not died. Instead, they had been sent from the garden alive to find a new place, to learn to live there as best they might, wresting a living from the now hostile earth. She should have known then that the fruit of their disastrous choice, delayed, would be harvested little by little, and would entangle their children as well and their children's children. Forever, she breathed almost aloud. Forever and forever. This dying will never end. She should have seen this particular horror coming, she thought. She had recognized its elements from the beginning. She should have done something to stop it before it had a chance to start. It was a familiar thought, accompanied by a familiar stab of pain. There was nothing she could have said, nothing she could have done that would have changed what happened, would have prevented the disaster. Watching Enosh playing with flat stones by her bench, building something it seemed, she found her mind circling back to that disastrous day to live it again. This time she did not struggle against the familiar wash of memory, but let it fill her. Let it have its way. The day had been hot. It was the end of summer. Proudly, she had watched Cain, her firstborn son, going out to his fields to choose some of his crop as an offering for the Lord God. She remembered how happy she had been on the day of his birth. She had named him Cain, this new little man she and Adam had gotten from the Lord God, and they had rejoiced together in everything they learned, every new thing he learned. She had been equally pleased when Abel, their second son, was born. The boys had made their marriage complete in a way neither she nor Adam had envisioned, and they delighted in both, though the two were very different in talents and temperament, and relations between them were uneasy. Nevertheless, they had loved each other deeply, and Eve had trusted that their affection would smooth out the difficulties in the relationship when they had come to manhood. Abel was easygoing, accepting everyone cheerfully, as he was loving and uncomplicated. Everyone loved him, so he found his plans smooth and found joy in all he did. Everything seemed to prosper under his hands and to flourish in his care. Cain was more edgy. He loved his brother, but he seemed to feel that he was in competition with Abel for their parents' love and attention. A competition Abel didn't even seem to notice, which hadn't helped at all, Eve thought. She tried carefully to intervene, but she was unable to convince Cain that he was as well loved as Abel, and Abel only laughed in disbelief when she mentioned the problem to him and continued to treat Cain as he always had, with warm, if casual, affection. And so matters had stood on the day the brothers were to offer sacrifices of thanksgiving, first fruits of their labor, to the Lord God. Eve remembered thinking as she watched Cain disappear into his fields that this might be the occasion when he and Abel, who had gone out the day before to choose lambs from his flocks for his offering, might finally fully enter brotherhood, and Cain might find some peace. The young men had both labored hard and prospered equally. Cain's harvest of grain, fruits, and vegetables had been abundant. Abel's flocks of sheep and goats had multiplied and grown strong and fat. There was no question that the Lord God had loved and blessed them both, and their parents in them. Perhaps now Cain could believe that his parents too loved them both, and valued each other as brother and valued each brother as himself and for his own gifts. Eve remembered that she had even allowed herself at that moment to hope that this prosperity was a sign that the Lord God had forgiven them, that they might not have to die the death, maybe even that they might be allowed to return to the garden. She smiled bitterly. How foolish she had been. And then she sighed. If only she could have frozen that moment when both her beloved sons were gathering their offerings and hope was alive that they would finally be able to love each other without the tension of Cain's fear and its bitterness. If only she could have stopped time there. But at that point, she hadn't known. And even if she had, there was nothing she could have done. There was nothing she could do now either except to stop this remembering, drive out the pictures and the sounds, and turn her mind to something else. But she wasn't sure she wanted to do that. She felt a tug in her skirt and looked down. Enosh had finished his building project and wanted her to look at it. "It's lovely, baby," she said absently, and then looked more closely. "Enosh," she asked, her eyes wide, "what have you built?" "Altar," he announced, proud to be able to get his tongue around the grown-up word. "Like Dada and Grandpa's. Fire there, Seki." He stopped, frowning impatiently at the words he could not say. "Sacrifice," said Eve softly, feeling tears begin to gather behind her eyelids and in her throat. "Sacrifice," the child repeated triumphantly. "Good. Altar sacrifice good?" "Very good," whispered his grandmother. "It's a beautiful altar of sacrifice, Enosh. There's never been a better." The boy grinned at her praise. "I build house now, Grandma," he announced and set to work. "Yes, baby," Eve murmured. "You build the house. Good boy." Her lips thinned as she pressed them together against the pain of the memories Enosh's altar had brought to vivid present life. And we're going to go to part 2. I hope you'll join me there.